G'day guys, welcome back to Knock Loose 4x4 and Adventures. In today's video, we're back in the shed, so that can only mean one thing and one thing only. We're putting another mod inside the big 105 series. This one's a bit different. We've never put a mod like this in any of our cars, and you guessed it, we're putting in a rear diff lock. So really excited. This has been really long waited, and obviously I've really wanted one pretty much the whole time being full driving. Now, if you guys aren't aware what a diff lock does, essentially it allows your diff to engage both the wheels to rotate at the exact same time, which essentially gives you traction at all times. Obviously, with the standard cars or most of the older cars, they came out with a factory LSD and an open differential at the front. So the open differential means it allows your wheels to spin. So if you're cornering, you need one wheel to do, for example, about 80 to 20 or 60 to 40. With the LSD, it just means limited slip diff. So that means when you're out bush, sometimes that can lock up and engage. So you've got a little bit more traction than just your standard open diff. So we'll get more into that later though. For now, let's crack open the box and get started. So if you guys are wondering whether I'm doing the front or the rear, I've chosen to do the rear first. So if I had it my way, I would be doing twin lockers, but money just doesn't allow for that. So maybe down the future, but for now, we're gonna go off the rear purely because my rear LSD is getting pretty tired. The car's done nearly 300,000 clicks, so they are really good LSDs, but they definitely don't compare to what the GUs and GQs, so the Nissan Patrols have. So yeah, the rear diff was a great alternative, and you'll see why I chose the rear diff over the front diff later. But yeah. Alright, so as I've said, I've gone for the LTG 4x4 rear diff lock. Now, why did I go with LTG over and above ARB, TJM or Harrop? Now, LTG came up, they definitely come up the most affordable out of all three of them. I was looking between an air locker, an auto locker, or an e-locker. Now, after doing all my research, I pretty much automatically wrote off a auto locker. I've heard some stories of them locking up on people while they're driving and having all sorts of issues. Next option was electrical and a air locker. Now, an air locker are great because you get instant lock-in and means that essentially whenever you want traction, you've got it. With the e-lockers, they rely on the magnetic power to engage. So it means that they're a bit delayed. So if you're stuck in a bog hole and you physically can't turn, they won't engage. Now, Patrick's had that in experience with his 2022 Hilux. So that was a big thing I took into consideration. But the main thing was the price. Now, with the air locker, obviously you've got to get a bearing kit, the air lines, the air kit, like the air locker as well. And then plus you've got to have an air compressor. Now, the big 105 doesn't have an air compressor, and I've never had an issue with just taking one of those portable air compressors that connect to your battery. So I just used the King's one, and that does me fine. So I've never really had a need to get an air compressor. Now, with the e-lockers, they came in more simple. Is this car's really reliable in terms of the electrical. I've never had any issues with it, so it was pretty self-explanatory. I've heard that essentially it's only a couple wires. If something goes wrong, they're very easy to diagnose. So we end up pulling through with the LTG e-locker, and these guys are a bit of a hidden brand. Not many people know about them, but I'm really keen to give their product a test because they definitely work out the best value for money. I spoke to the boys down at LTG, and they were really nice and super helpful on guiding me and gave me some directions into how to fit it myself. Now, I was going to pay for someone to fit it, but I thought, you know what, I've done so much on cars, let's give it a crack. Now, this one's definitely out of my comfort zone, so I am nervous. So I will say, definitely don't take this on a how-to video. I'm just going to show you guys that it is doable in your own comforts of your own house. I don't have a massive shed, I don't have the most expensive tools, but I'm here with a smile and giving it all a crack. So let's see how we go, and yeah, hopefully it will go smoothly. So we have to get this locker done in the next few nights. So it's actually a work night at the minute. I'm going to spend a couple hours hopefully getting it out tonight and then putting it in tomorrow night. Because this weekend we're actually heading away to Tallowark for the Untamed 4x4 meet. So you might see content on that on the channel. But that means we essentially have to get it done. So we've called for some backup, and he will be here shortly. Before now, I think I'm going to start pulling the rear diff apart and pretty much just getting the diff center out. Right. Okay, so we don't have much daylight. We've got probably about 40 more minutes. So the quality is going to be dropping in and out because we're going to be relying on torches. And like I said, it is actually a work night. We're going full driving this weekend, so we've got 2 nights, which is about 8 to 10 hours to get this done. So I'm really, really excited, but I best we get into it now, and yeah, let's see how we go. So the good thing about doing the rear diff lock at home is it means it's easier to get the rear diff center out, because it's as simple as taking these 2 drive shafts out, because on the rears you can still access them without taking the wheels off, or on my model you can. With the front, you have to take everything off, including all the brake setup, all your wheel bearings, undo all them, and yeah, it can lead to a bit more of a headache. So it's pretty straightforward on taking the shafts out, but we'll run you through, I guess, us taking it out, and then yeah, we'll get the center out and have a closer look at where the diff lock's going to sit and how to set it up properly. Alright, so that's the big rear diff of the big 105. So first things first, we're going to drain all the old oil out of the drain plug. Make sure, obviously, you can crack your filler plug before you bother doing that, because if you can't crack your filler, then you can't refill your diff oil. And then after that, we are going to be taking off the tail shaft that goes to the rear diff. So that's just held on by these 4 bolts just here, and simply slide that off so the rear diff is completely disconnected from the car, and it means the car will no longer be able to drive until we get it done. So we'll do all that, then we'll take out the 2 shafts, and we'll go from there. Alright, so we'll drain out the rear diff oil, hopefully not make too much of a mess. There we go. Whew. That is disgusting. Nothing on the little magnet. Sweet, looks like rear diff is okay. So there's a little bit of water in there, should be a little bit cleaner than that, but that's okay, because we're going to also be installing diff breathers, but that's on the side. So sweet, we'll let that do its thing, and we'll start disconnecting this tail shaft. Alright, so I've just cracked all of these, so I've just cracked all 4 of the tail shaft bolts. Now we'll just get the ugga-dugga, get those ones all out, and then that's the rear tail shaft. Okay, so like I said, it's after work now, so it is getting a bit dark, but we're going to persevere. We've got Patty here giving us a hand, so Pat, say g'day.
Hey guys.
So now we've drained the diff oil, we've taken the tail shaft out, we've talked to you guys, so now it's time to get the drive shafts out. So we'll undo these 6 nuts here, and then you just got the little washer, and we'll take out the axles. A quick tip for you guys, with these little retaining clips that come in the 105 series, not too sure what other cars have them, give really, really gently so you don't bugger the thread, just give it the end a little tap, and they literally come right out. So they can be a bit of a pain sometimes, but that's the easiest way, just be careful not to damage the thread. And now we can take out the rear drive shaft, so try not to make a mess in the driveway. Cool. So there you go, that's the rear drive shaft. So that's just the right hand side. Oh, making a bit of a mess. Now we'll pretty much do everything we've done on this side, but to the left side. And then from there, we can get the rear diff center out. So awesome. We'll give that a clean as well before we put it in. But yeah, we'll just put that aside. Okay guys, so we've got both of the drive shafts, or CVs, whatever you want to call them. So the small one is the rear right, obviously because the diff center is a bit off center, and then the longer one is the rear left. So now we're up to getting the rear center diff out, because both of these 2 obviously clamp inside, but now I've taken them out, so it's just the rear diffs in there by itself. So you've got 10 bolts underneath the car, which we'll quickly undo, and we'll get the rear diff out. So to make life easier, I'm just going to quickly zip tie the rear tail shaft so it's not in my way, just to the pan nut up there. Nice and secure, now it's not in the way while we work.
And that's the rear diff center. Woo, she's heavy. Now let's get her out of the car. And there she is. The big 105 rear center diff. So, she's pretty heavy. For that, if you want to get close up, Hattie, this is what the inside of a diff looks like. So what I'll do is I'm gonna quickly clear some room on the bench and we'll get it all set up there and start having a closer look. But it's pretty sick, isn't it? Okay, so we've got the rear diff out and she's heavy. Cool. Alright, so as you can see, this is the LTG locker box. So, see what we got inside. So, we've got the electrical locker rear fitting instructions. So that will just have all the specs, I'm presuming, all the torque specs. Oh yeah, and coloured photos as well. Oh, beauty. That will make it a breeze. Cool, so we got the instructions to fit it. As you can see, I'm literally just in the monks of it. Didn't have time to clean my shed. All the little accessory bits to fit it all. 2 bearings, sweet. And the switch as well. Beautiful, cool. And then I'm presuming, there she is. There is the rear diff lock. So we'll take, so that's a wiring harness, as simple as 3 wires. Wow. So wiring harness, and we'll take this bad boy out. Get rid of this box. And there she is, the rear diff lock. Cool. So I've actually never seen the inside of a diff, let alone a diff lock. So that gets me excited. And that looks very, very complicated. Beautiful. So as you can see, 2 plugs there. And yeah, all nice quality. Sweet. Let's give this a crack. Left it. Okay, so it is now the next day, taking off where we left yesterday night. Patty and I ended up getting the diff center out. We're just having a look at it and then up having a chat about it. We lost time, obviously it wasn't work night, but now it's a Friday and we are actually meant to be going camping tonight. So, that means we need to get this locker in. So Pat was kind enough today, because he's got a broken wing, he's not working at the minute. He took my rear diff down and got the 2 bearings pressed in, which I'll show you in a minute. But that was really nice of him. I don't have a bearing press here, and I was going to do the Aussie Arvo's life hack with the table, but my table isn't actually bolted into the ground, so it's not too sturdy. So that's okay. We just went down to Petter's Suspension. That cost us about $50. They were really nice about it. Just said, yeah, sure, we'll quickly press it in for you, and they've done a really good job. So the rear diff is sweet. We've got Jacob obviously coming over in the LS3. He's actually got the backlash tool, and he's going to be helping us and teaching me all about the backlash. Now, you can do these without measuring all the backlash at the start, but at the end, obviously, you have to. But I want to do it all properly, and just follow, obviously, what the instructions say in the guide and recommendations. So, yeah, until Jacob gets here, though, what we're going to do is start to run the wiring into the cab for the actual switch. Obviously, we'll get the power to the locker, and we'll start just clearing away the old gasket that's stuck on the diff underneath the car, and there's a little bit just around this diff center. So we'll get the old gasket off, we'll sort out the new gasket. By then, Jacob will be here, and then we'll do the fun part of actually putting the locker in here and disassembling the whole locker diff assembly. So really, really excited. Yeah, let's get into it. Alright, so while we're quickly at it, we're going to start by just taking off the old gasket around the diff center. So it's pretty straightforward, just with a razor blade, gently go around there. Now in the kit, it doesn't supply with a new diff gasket, but they're quite cheap. I think I paid about $12 for mine, and that's just a terrain tamer diff gasket for the 105 series. So we'll start by just getting a razor blade and taking this one off nice and gently. And then we'll move to underneath the car and start taking that one off as well. So that right there, that is what Talangi does to your car. Okay, so I've gotten a little bit excited and I started getting carried away and forgot I wasn't filming, but that's okay. So now we're up to the wiring side of things. So this is the wiring loom that they give you, which obviously that's all just for your switch. Must got your fuse, and then that is what runs to your locker. So it's really straightforward, and then that's just must be what powers it, I'm presuming. Really straightforward, but essentially what we're going to do is on the Land Cruisers, you've got 3 spare spots here, or at least on my model you do. So I'm going to do the 2 top left and right. My left one's going to be my rear one, and then eventually down track when I get a front, that will go to the right, and then this, I don't know, I'll think of something for there later. On the Land Cruiser, it's super easy to get these off. They just pull right off, same as this little foot one. And then the seals come out, and you've just got a little screw just here, and that just pops straight out. So what we're going to do is begin to run the wiring and start setting that all up. And yeah, we'll film as much as we can. Bit hard because there's a few tricky spots, but yeah, let's give it a crack. So I've just gone ahead and taken out the factory little rubber grommet that is underneath the car. So if you lift this one up, that is where, that hole there is where we're going to be running the wiring loom from the rear diff all the way into the cab. And you can see here, I'll just pick up the camera, you can see here, this is where I'm going to be mounting the switch that they give you. So that panel essentially will just move back and we'll get the switches there, run the wires nicely down here, tuck them around, and then we'll just drill a small hole into this grommet and put some silicone around there so when we do water crossings, nothing will get in. Awesome. So one thing I'm loving at the minute about LTG is, man, they are neat. So I've never seen how other brands pack lockers, and if they do it like this, good on them. But LTG, they provide everything really neatly in the instructions. Well, I have been browsing through the instructions off camera, and they're really, really clear. So coloured pictures, which is really good. And once again, Tom at LTG said, you know, Shane, if you have any dramas, give me a buzz or email, and I'm more than happy to give you guys a hand. So awesome. So here's the loom here. What we'll do is we'll get these ones all sorted for the switch, which will eventually have to come out just up here as discussed. And yeah, that means the switch is ready and we'll run this to the rear diff. So the wiring is all done. So that's coming in from obviously that little hole underneath here. Goes inside the chassis because this is where the exhaust is on this side. And then it follows all the way through, pops back out here, over the body mount, and then obviously just over the chassis, all the way to the rear diff. So obviously we've just got it in a small bundle at the minute, waiting for that diff center to go back in. And then, yeah, we can wire it all up. So I'm happy if that's all neat, away from any hazards. And yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. Alright, so here it is, all laid out. So we've got, obviously, the rear diff lock, the wiring harness, and then your 2 bearings. I'm presuming that's the bit that goes in your diff to seal it. No clue what that is, but we'll soon find out. And obviously the switches as well. So yeah, this is a little bit intimidating. Once again, I've never installed anything like this or anything this complicated, but looks like they've got really thorough instructions. So fingers crossed. And yeah, it all pans out. And any questions, I'll shoot the guys at LTG a message. As I said, they're more than happy to help. So we've got the full instructions to suit the 105 series. So it all is manufactured with the right torque specs as well. And everything that we really need to know is there. So it's time to give it a crack. So just with a paint marker, we've marked the bearing cup. So obviously for the left side, or the way you're looking at diff now, on the left, you got 2 and 2 which match. I've just put a line so we can roughly get it back to the same spot, hopefully. And then on this side, just 1 and 1. So we won't get mixed up now, which is good, because obviously this one, it can't go there and that one can't go there. I'm presuming a lot of people do mistake it because they do say to specifically actually do this. And obviously, yeah, it just makes life a hell of a lot easier. So that's all good. Now, Jacob's not far away, and he'll bring the backlash tool, and then we can check all this and start the fun part.
Righto. So, name's Jacob, one of Shaden's mates. So, I'm here to give him a hand and a bit of a chop out to do this rear locker for him as we're going camping tonight. We'll set the backlash and everything and drill the pilot hole for the e-locker and the wiring, and we'll make sure it's all sweet, and then put it back in the car, and we'll get out and hit the tracks tonight.
So Jacob's got the backlash tool, which is sweet.
Which is the dial indicator tool, which is how we do it properly. You can do it by hand, but locker and everything like that, we'll try and do it as close and as properly as we can. The only thing we haven't got is the tool for your cap bearings, which isn't a big deal. You can use a screwdriver. It's a little bit cowboy, but it is still fine. It'll still work, and it'll do for what we need to do. So.
Okay, so as you can see, it's all dark now and it's now night time. We've smashed out as much as we could until we need Jacob's hand because he's got some tools that I don't have. So we're going to smash it out, film as much as we can. Bit hard with the dark, but let's get into it. Sweet.
Rattle.
How's that? There you go.
Little. So we'll get the crammer off, and we'll get that put onto the air locker, and then start putting the air locker together, and then we'll put it back in.
Stinks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we can get the crown wheel off now because we've undone all the bolts, and then this will obviously slot onto the new locker. This is the bearings I was telling you about that Pat kindly went down to Petters and got them pressed on. I don't have a bearing press, that's the only thing that we're not doing here in the shed. But yeah, it's all going real smoothly.
Oh, we'll get this off. Really should use a brass hammer to get the crown wheel off because it's hardened steel, but we haven't got one, which is fine. So just sort of just tap the sides.
There she goes. So what we're going to quickly do, because we don't have a brass hammer, we're going to put a few of these bolts in and then pull up the crown. So then that is then flush here, and then we'll take the bolts back out and smack some Loctite on them so they don't fall out. Sweet.
That's fine, mate. No worries.
When you tighten these ones, make sure you do them in a zigzag direction so it clamps it with even pressure. So you can do zigzag or diagonal, doesn't really matter as long as it's all even. So we've quickly run to the back of Jacob's work car just because he's got a bigger vise, just so we can torque down these bolts here.
We got this side here. That'll set the bearing preload for your diff. And then this side here will set your backlash. So we'll probably try set the bearing preload first and then get that right. And then after that, to do the backlash, you've just pretty much got to do, so say if we go 3 or 4 notches in or out, you've got to do the exact same side on the backlash side, so then you don't lose your bearing preload. You got to double check it anyway. Most of the time it will stay, but sometimes they don't. You got to redo your preload. It's not a big deal. You can still do it, but it's a bit easier if you set it first and then fingers crossed it stays sort of the same.
Sweet. So this is the thing that we don't have the tool for.
Yeah,
so
correct.
Just using it with a
You can use it with a screwdriver or a punch. It's not ideal, but it'll work. If you just haven't got the tool for it, normally it's just a little 2 pieces of steel on like sort of a spanner, and you can do it that way. That's the tool. But we use a punch and we'll punch it through. It'll be right.
Sweet. I'm tinkering around, just setting it all right. Jacob's also is teaching me how the backlash actually works. Looks like we've got it within specs. So the manual said in between 0.8 and 0.12. Wait, what was it 0.8?
So it's the manual on the instructions we get here. Yeah, backlash is meant to be 0.008 or 0.012, and then we've got it within that spec there, if you can see, or at 0.009. So yeah, 0.009, which is within spec, which still gives us a bit of room for expansion and then cool down as well. So that's the whole reason with backlash, is that when the diff warms up, because the diffs get pretty warm, is the seal expands. So you obviously want that little bit of play in between the teeth, and obviously the oil will take up a little bit of that play as well. But then when it heats up, it expands. So you don't want it to be tight because it will bind up. So that's why you give your backlash. And with your 0.008 and your 0.012, you try to keep it in between. So then you've got 2 to play with and 2 to play with either way. So
sweet. So yeah, she's pretty much all in now. And now we'll pretty much make sure, double check and triple check absolutely everything while we've got the diff out. And yeah, we're really, really happy with the outcome of that. So we've just gone ahead and put on the bracket to hold the EM and the wiring. So tucks in all nicely. Bit same as an air locker with the air feed line, but a bit different. So there's your magnet there. Yeah, all coming along real nice. Okay, so it's currently 8:30 at the minute, and we're meant to be heading out bush. That's why I've got Jacob giving us a quick chop out. We've got a Tallow meet this weekend, so it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, we'll keep you updated with how we're doing for time. The locker so far owes us maybe about 7 hours, including last night's labour after work. So I think we're doing pretty good for time for doing our first locker, but no, we're smashing it. Now for the fun part, drilling a hole through the diff. So with this one, drilled out to a 10.5mm hole, and now we're tapping it out with an M12 by 1.5. Alright, so there's a hole tapped out nicely, and now just run the wires straight through. Pretty self-explanatory. Wire straight through, and then put the little adapter on, and pretty much ready to go back in the car. Perfect.
So yeah, normally you'd probably run some thread tape or thread sealant, but the fact that that's got an O-ring on it, you won't have to. That'll seal up just fine like that.
Alright, we're really happy. So she's all complete. We've got the wires all run neatly so it doesn't touch anything while it's going. We'll put the plug on as well. So now it's time to put it underneath the car and get all the axles and stuff back in. Wire up the switch, which we've partly done here. And yeah, we started this in the daylight and now it's very much night time, but it should be done tonight. So that's a gasket in. Now for the rear diff to go back in. Hold up. There you go.
That's the ticket.
Rear diff is in. Awesome. So now I'm going to quickly smash out, put the axles back in. So it's the same method as what it was to take it out to put it back in. And yeah, then we'll do the wiring and go test her. So quickly just do that. So now with the locker all in, it was time to put the axles back in. From here, it's pretty self-explanatory what to do. We just connected the wires, and now the 105 is officially rear locked. So tune in for the next video where we test out our rear locker in Tallarook, Victoria.